Have you ever wanted to design a space just for writing and creativity? Well, that's the project I've undertaken over the past year, and this writing studio is the result. I'm a novelist living in New York City, a place not exactly known for its spacious living quarters, so that presented a few challenges, but they do say constraints are good for creativity. If you're thinking about designing your own creative studio, I hope this video will give you some inspiration and ideas. I'll take you through the redesign process, then give you a tour of the final product. Now let's rewind the clock to 1 year ago. No, a little further. I've always had a fascination with design, whether it was building cities out of Lego or creating logos for fictional companies in my books or reorganizing my room. When it comes to this bedroom, I've had to balance practicalities, a bed, space for clothes, a desk for studying, with my various creative passions. I'm a writer, a reader, a filmmaker, a content creator, an occasional composer, and an avid Lego builder. Over the years, I've redesigned this room several times in pursuit of the perfect setup with enough space for all those aspects of myself. But it wasn't until early last year that I embarked on a true reimagining of the entire room. I was 18, and with adulthood came a new sense of creative freedom and agency. I wanted to put my fledgling interior design skills to the test with an ambitious project, creating my dream writing studio. The first thing that desperately needed to change was the wall color. This room was divided in half, with one side a sky blue and the other a light tan. If you've seen any of my videos, it's pretty obvious I kinda like blue. Tan, not so much. Especially since I filmed videos on that side of the room, and the color provided little contrast against my skin. I wanted something a little more me. I hunted for the right color and finally found it. Bold blue. Bingo. But I wasn't just gonna paint the walls. I wanted a new layout entirely, so I pulled out my trusty graph paper and sketched out some options. I also designed some mock-ups in Canva of what I wanted my filming setup and primary workstation to look like. I wanted this redesign to bring more style to the space. Yes, I wanted my room to be functional, but I also wanted it to reflect my aesthetic sensibilities. I wanted it to inspire me. The style I was going for was something of a cross between dark academia and minimalism. Now, if you know anything about those styles, you'll know they're very different. Dark academia is about texture and ornate designs. Minimalism is about simplicity and a lack of clutter. They're pretty far apart on the design spectrum, but I tried to find a balance between the two, since I love aspects of both. Once I was happy with a plan, I found a new desk and bookshelves, then got to work painting. One issue I quickly ran into was that an entire strip of my wall had been damaged by a leak during a heavy rainstorm a few months prior. I'm sure someone handier than I could have made it look better, but I did the best I could at the time. It's still a little rough. Let's say it adds character. It's also worth noting that I was making daily short-form videos during this project. Having my room in complete disarray made that more challenging. One video I filmed sitting on the floor against a half-painted wall. You make do with what you have. Once I was finished with the first stage of redesigning that side of the room, I turned my sights to the other half. Since I'm short on space, I've had a loft bed for several years. Beneath it was a 15 square foot table covered in a Lego city I'd been building, destroying, and rebuilding again since 2018. The idea behind it was a collision of fictional universes. So you would have characters and locations from Star Wars, Jurassic Park, Harry Potter, Marvel, my own books, and dozens of other worlds combined into one city. It was pretty fun. Unfortunately, it took up time and space I couldn't afford. I disassembled the city to make room for an expansion to my new creative studio. Maybe it'll return someday. Only time will tell. In its place, I plan to design a smaller space just for writing. The desk on the opposite side of the room would be my primary workstation and filming area, with a standing setup and a desktop screen ideal for editing videos. On this side would be a secondary workspace, simpler and intended primarily for writing. Just like last time, I created some mock-ups of what I wanted it to look like, and found a desk and smaller bookshelves that complemented their counterparts across the room. I also chose these minimalist wall panels as a centerpiece, almost like a window I'm looking out on. Over the next several months, I continued to make small improvements, playing around with different bookshelf layouts and replacing certain elements. Slowly but surely, my dream writing studio came to life. That brings us to the room tour. We'll start here at the studio bay, my primary workstation. This is where I do most of my work. Editing videos, admin tasks, and plenty of writing too. Though the desk is a standard sitting height, I've created a permanent standing setup with this shelf I painted black serving as a keyboard riser and this little bookshelf serving as a computer stand. In the bookshelf, I keep a few books about writing and filmmaking that are good to have on hand. I often write standing, but if I'm tired of being on my feet, that's what the secondary workstation is for. We'll get to that in a minute. Since I always stand here, there's a rug to make it a little more comfortable. At the heart of this setup is a 24-inch M1 iMac. This was the first time I ever upgraded my computer. Until 2023, I was working with a 15-inch 2013 MacBook Air. It was really starting to show its age after a decade of writing novels and editing films. In fact, until I got this new computer, I had to borrow my dad's laptop every time I wanted to edit a video. Thanks, Dad. Since the iMac, frustratingly, doesn't come with any kind of port other than USB-C, it sits on this stand with additional ports, including the all-important SD card slot and a 1TB card for more space. There's also a 4TB solid-state drive plugged into the back. I shoot a lot of 4K video, and it adds up fast. To add some life to the space, there's a plant on the left and a Pixar-style lamp on the right. The bookshelves are where I got to have a bit more fun with expressing myself, and they're the part of the room that's changed the most over the past year. I think the layout I've landed at now is a good balance between aesthetics and practicality, between empty space and rows of books. Since I was going for a more minimalist look, I didn't want every shelf to be packed end to end. Here we have the skyline of my city, New York, in Lego. Ironically, this is the only Lego set I've bought abroad. Next to it is a stack of journals, most of which I used in the past to document my life or even outline films and books. This is the classics section, including Crime and Punishment, one of my favorites. We've got a small lamp and a quill atop a children's literature book from the 1910s. I don't know where it came from, it may have belonged to someone in my family. The next shelf down is all about history and travel, two things I'm passionate about. Also musicals. This shelf is dedicated to film. I was looking for a black and white clapboard to go here, but I couldn't find one the right size, so I built one myself. With Lego, of course. Most of the builds on display are sets, but there are a few like this one that I created from scratch. The bottom shelf of this bookshelf, and the other one, are books that didn't fit on any of the other shelves, loosely arranged by subject. Here we have the skyline of Paris, probably my second favorite city after New York. This moon lamp can be any color, but you know me, it's gotta be blue. This shelf is home to some of my favorite sci-fi books. I highly recommend Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep in particular. It's the book that inspired the Blade Runner films, the latter of which has been a major inspiration for my upcoming novel Catalyst of Control. You'll see some of its influence on my secondary writing workspace shortly. This Lego bonsai tree is technically my own design, but it's based on an existing set. The Mysteries of Harris Burdick is placed on prominent display because it's the book that inspired my very first novel. It's filled with black and white illustrations and mysterious captions. The drawing featured on the cover became the spark of The Magnet, a fantasy novel following a group of kids on a strange, frightening, and surreal adventure. Nothing in this image made its way directly into the book, other than the idea of a band of children my age venturing into a fantastical world. I was 7 when I wrote the novel. The books on this shelf and the next are arranged more by color and size than topic. They range from a book about Christopher Nolan, one of my favorite filmmakers, to Les Mis, one of my favorite novels and musicals. Rounding out the shelf is a Lego bamboo plant. Right next to this bookshelf is a chest of drawers topped by a Lego model of Hogwarts Castle. I made a few adjustments to the set, including giving it a more substantial base. I've been compared to Harry Potter more times than I can count in the comments of my videos, so it's only appropriate that I have my own school of witchcraft and wizardry in my writing studio. On the other side, I have my messenger bag ready to go. It's what I take whenever I'm out and about in the city. Above are Lego space vignettes. I love space, I love sci-fi, I love Lego. It's perfect. There's another chest of drawers in this corner, topped by shelves with a few more display models. The Millennium Falcon, the London skyline, a T-Rex skull from Jurassic Park, and the Disney castle at the very top. Now onto the other side of the room. I was working with a few more constraints on this side. A closet, a loft bed, and a storage rack, all of which had to stay. The closet contains both clothes and Lego parts bins because I am rather short on space. Under the loft bed is where I set up the writing nook, my secondary workspace designed for writing and reading. It's forest themed, inspired by my publishing company Winter Forest Press. I built 2 Lego mountainside dioramas to top the bookshelves, each representing a scene from one of my novels. The Winter Forest mountain is from a flashback chapter of Catalyst of Control. This is a young Kyrus Varden, the book's protagonist. The other characters, well, you'll meet them when you read the book. This build used up almost all the white slope parts in my collection, but I think the end result was worth it. There are trees sparsely dotting the mountainside, with some smaller ones in the back, an attempt at forced perspective. This autumnal mountainside is even more packed with detail. Technically, it's from a book I haven't written yet, but one I've been planning for years. There are some birch trees in the front, a rocky path, a small pond, and a lot of trees. Below the winter mountainside, we have The Creative Act by Rick Rubin, and then a few books about Lego. This red fox complements the winter forest theme, and it reminds me of The Green Knight, a film with some beautiful visuals. Another film whose imagery I find inspiring is Blade Runner 2049, which is why its art book has such a prominent place on this bookshelf. I also built a Lego version of Kay's spinner from the film. Below are several books and magazines about writing and creativity, which I'll often pull out if I want something to read. In the corner we have the storage rack, not very aesthetic, but it's practical. This is literally just a black tablecloth held in place by binder clips. This is where I keep everything from Lego minifigures to travel accessories to filming equipment. The most used shelf is this one, where I keep all my essential video production gear. This storage rack also doubles as a nightstand for my loft bed. Up top is a whiteboard and dry erase marker where I can jot down any ideas I get at night. To add a little more character, there's also a lineup of Lego cars, including Batman's Tumbler, the DeLorean time machine from Back to the Future, a Jurassic Park Jeep, and James Bond's Aston Martin. Right beside the storage rack is my window. Nice view, right? No, I'm not actually going to show you my view for privacy reasons, but let's just imagine it looks like that. Next to the window is an undecorated wall segment. I'm not quite sure what I want to do with it, if anything. Maybe a framed cover of Catalyst of Control? If you've got an idea, tell me in the comments. Now for a little behind the scenes look. Here's my main setup for filming these videos. The camera sits on a tripod under the loft bed, and I use a lav mic attached to this thing to record audio. That runs into my laptop, which I also use as a monitor for the camera. For lighting, I use a key light off to one side, a reflector on the other, and this contraption creating a hair light for extra color and background separation. There's a small light pointed at the right bookshelf, which doesn't get much illumination from the key light. Up on that side of the room is an LED strip helping brighten the whole room. When I'm filming, my blackout curtain is drawn to prevent fluctuations in natural light from causing an inconsistent image. Lighting such a small space is tricky. This isn't a perfect setup. Ideally, I could move this key light further away and at a diagonal to my face instead of having it directly to the side, but I'm working within the confines of the room. And that completes the tour. I find interior design to be a fun thing to experiment with. It's a form of self-expression. Your selection of furniture and decor, how you arrange them, tell a story about you. And the space you inhabit can influence your mindset and actions. You don't need to have your dream studio to create great work, but putting just a little more thought into the way you design your space helps create an environment that inspires you. Everywhere I look in this room, I see things I love. Things that represent some part of me. When you're designing a space for yourself, your aim should never be to perfectly imitate something else. Yeah, you can take a lot of cues from a certain aesthetic or from photos you find online, but don't be afraid to let your unique quirks shine through. Interior design is an art, but it's also a form of play, much like writing. I've had a fun time designing this space, and I hope you've had a fun time getting to see it up close. I'd love to hear in the comments what your dream creative studio is. The location, what color you would paint the walls, all of it. If you want to stay up to date with what I'm doing, you can join my newsletter at the link in the description. And if you want to learn more about what life is like as a young writer in New York City, watch this next.